So imagine this. A king rides for weeks, hundreds of miles into the frozen north. Not for war, not for conquest, but for a reunion with his oldest friend. But this is so much more than a friendly visit, you know? It's a meeting between two men who are basically brothers, bound together by a bloody war and a heartbreaking loss. And the offer that's about to be put on the table, well, it's going to seal the fate of the entire kingdom. Okay, so first things first, let's get a handle on who we're talking about here. On one side, you've got the Robert Baratheon of legend, right? The demon of the trident, this absolute unit of a warrior. But then you look at the guy who actually shows up at Winterfell. Whoa, 15 years on the throne have changed him a lot. The warrior's gone, and in his place is this indulgent king. All that muscle has turned to fat. And this contrast, this is really the whole story right here. The man Ned Stark remembers, he's a ghost. He is not the king standing in front of him. All right, so the king's procession finally rolls in. The gates of Winterfell swing open, and it's just this river of gold and steel pouring into the courtyard. And yeah, Robert gives Ned this bone-crunching hug, like old times, but something's different. You can feel it. There's this new distance. Ned gets on one knee and says, "Your Grace, Winterfell is yours." I mean, it's formal. It's what you're supposed to do, but that's not how you greet your brother, is it? The friendship is definitely still there, buried underneath it all, but that crown, it's standing right between them. And then Robert makes his very first request, and it is weird. You know, you'd think he'd want to get inside, get warm, have a drink, see the feast they've prepared, but no. He bypasses all of it. He wants to go down into the cold, dark crypt, just like that. And that tells you everything you need to know. This visit isn't about the future of the kingdom, at least not yet. It's about a past that is very, very much alive for both of them. So down they go, deeper and deeper into the earth, down these winding stone steps into the silent home of all the dead Starks. And you can't help but feel it, right? This physical journey down into the cold and the dark, it's a perfect mirror for what's happening emotionally. They are literally walking back into their shared past, a past that's just filled with grief and violence. And as they're walking, the difference between these two guys just becomes so clear. It's almost comical. Robert is complaining about the north, how it's all bogs and forests and just vast emptiness and snow. But then he starts talking about his home, the south, and it's like he's describing paradise. Golden roses, ripe fruit, cheap wine, women swimming naked in the rivers. I mean, he is a man of appetites, a man of summer, through and through. And Ned? Well, Ned is not. And then they stop. They're standing in front of 3 tombs carved from stone. There's Ned's father, Rickard, his older brother, Brandon, and finally his sister, Lyanna. And you have to understand, these aren't just stone statues in a basement. These are the ghosts at the absolute center of their lives. These are the people whose deaths lit the fuse on the rebellion that put Robert on the throne. So how did this all go down? It was a domino effect, really. The Mad King executes Ned's dad and brother. That forces Ned and Robert, who were just boys, really, to call their banners and rebel. Robert has his legendary moment killing Prince Rhaegar at the Battle of the Trident. But the victory tastes like ash because right after, Ned finds his sister Lyanna dying. So yeah, Robert gets the crown, but look at the cost. It was absolutely immense. And all of it, the whole war, the crown, the crypt, all this grief that's lasted for 15 years, it all comes back to her. The face on that stone tomb, the memory that made a king ignore a feast and walk into a freezing crypt. So, who was Lyanna Stark? Simple answer? She was everything. She was the link between these two men. For Ned, she was his beloved little sister. For Robert, she was the love of his life, the woman he was supposed to marry, the entire future he thought he was going to have. And her death, at just 16 years old, is what fused their friendship into this bond of shared tragedy. Robert just stares at her stone face, and the first thing he says is this quiet, almost wounded complaint. She was more beautiful than that. Think about that. After 15 years of being king, with all the power and luxury in the world, his love for her is still so raw, so immediate, that a simple stone carving feels like an insult. It's just, wow, a moment of pure, unending grief. But then, just as quickly, that sadness, it flips. It turns into this white-hot rage. He says, "In my dreams, I kill him every night." He's talking about Rhaegar Targaryen, of course. He might have killed the man once in real life, but in his head, he's still fighting that war, killing him over and over and over. For Robert, you see, the war never really ended. His hatred is just as powerful as his love. Okay, so after that deep dive into the past, the conversation finally pivots to the here and now. And it turns out for King Robert, the present is, well, it's pretty miserable. He starts to pull back the curtain on what it's really like to be king. And you see this lonely, totally frustrated guy underneath all the finery. And he just lays it all out there. He says he's surrounded by flatterers and fools. He tells Ned that winning the throne was the easy part. Sitting on it is a nightmare. He's drowning in paperwork, bored out of his mind, and the worst part, he's completely and utterly alone. He can't trust anyone. Can you imagine that? Being the most powerful man in the world and having no one you can count on to tell you the truth. And this is it. This is the moment. All this talk about his misery, his loneliness, it all leads directly to the real reason he rode all the way to Winterfell. This wasn't just a nostalgic trip to a crypt. Robert needs something. He needs help, badly. And what he offers Ned is the job of Hand of the King. Now let's be clear, this is not a small thing. The Hand of the King is basically the second most powerful man in the kingdom. He runs the whole show in the king's name. It's the king's voice, his top general, his chief lawmaker. It is the most powerful and probably the most dangerous job in the entire realm. But Robert, being Robert, he doesn't just give Ned the fancy official job description. Nah, he gives him the version you'd hear in a back alley tavern. The king eats, he says, and the hand takes the shit. And that, right there, tells you everything. Robert wants the fun parts of being king, the feasts, the wine, the glory. He needs Ned to do all the dirty work, to handle all the problems, to, take the shit. But wait, there's more. The offer is actually a 2-for-1 deal. It's not just a job. Robert also proposes they join their houses. He wants to betroth his son and heir, Joffrey, to Ned's oldest daughter, Sansa. So this isn't just a political appointment. He's saying, I don't just want you to work for me, I want us to be family, for real, bound by blood. So what an incredible honor, right? A chance to run the kingdom, to have his daughter be queen one day. How does Ned react? With a big smile? With gratitude? Nope. With pure, absolute dread. You can just see it on his face. This offer doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a death sentence. Every single instinct in Ned's body is just screaming no. He's a Stark of Winterfell. His place is here in the north, with his people, with the ghosts of his family right here in this crypt. To go south, to that warm snake pit of a court, he just knows in his bones it would be a fatal mistake. And this one little exchange they have just says it all. Robert's trying to joke, lighten the mood, but Ned just comes back with this super grim northern saying about laughter freezing in a man's throat. There's just no humor in him at that moment, none of that southern warmth. It's more than a comeback. It's him saying, we are not the same. You don't understand my world. It perfectly shows that massive, unbridgeable gap between the King of Summer and the Lord of Winter. So as he's standing there, in the silence of the crypt, with this life-altering decision hanging over his head, he is just hit with this overwhelming sense of doom. It's not just nerves or apprehension. The text literally calls it a terrible sense of foreboding. It's like he can feel the eyes of his dead ancestors on him, warning him. He just knows. He knows that saying yes will lead to absolute ruin. And that's where we have to leave him, trapped, surrounded by tombs, facing an impossible choice, caught between loyalty to his friend and this gut feeling of dread. He's carrying the weight of the past on his shoulders and seeing a terrible vision of the future. And those final words of the chapter, they're the Stark family words. But right here, in this moment, they don't sound like a warning. They sound like a promise. Winter was coming.